Alright, I'm back again, YouTube, and I'm going to review the first episode of MCU's She-Hulk Attorney at Law. You know, ever since the first trailer, I was not excited for this. I mean, I've said multiple times that I've pretty much given up on the MCU, and the only reason that I'm reviewing this is because Hulk is one of my favorite characters, even though the MCU has long since butchered his character. Uh, but I just felt like some sort of obligation to at least know that Disney and Marvel, if some off chance, could handle the She-Hulk character well. And I mean, there were some glimpses of potential. They did understand that there was some of the humor that was going on through John Byrne's run of the She-Hulk, with her She-Hulk breaking the fourth wall. Uh, a good chunk of it focusing on her uh, on her business of being a lawyer. But then we got a lot of concerning things, such as the writers putting their political views in there, suggesting that the reason why people were criticizing the CGI was because they felt they had an ownership over women's bodies, even though the real reason was because the CGI just didn't look good. It looked really uncanny and unnatural. And Jessica Gao, the head writer and creator of the show, admitting that she and her writing team were planning on having a multi-episode arc covering the Abomination's trial, yet they don't know how to write engaging trials episodes. Isn't it just isn't it just great when you hire people to do something and they don't even know how to do it? So Kevin Feige hired people who don't know how to write trial episodes. So why did you hire them? What were they a diversity hire? I mean, I know they were a diversity hire, but that's seriously it. Let's just get into it. So the episode starts off with Jennifer Walters, aka the She-Hulk, uh, getting ready to make her closing argument about the case that she's going through. We have her best friend of, I want to say, maybe Latina ethnicity. He's just a BAFF and just there to emotionally validate her. We also have her opposing lawyer, who's basically just there to be the typical feminist archetype of being the evil straight white man who's meant to deride our female protagonist and make himself seem obnoxious and superior. Oh boy, I just love these tropes. I couldn't get enough of that in Captain Marvel or any of the other recent uh, feminist led movies and shows that have in the past 6 years. And as the trial reaches point, um, the best friend mentions that if things don't go as planned, you could always just Hulk out and finish this. And Jen decides to uh, break the fourth wall, which should be expected, and explain her origin story. So we have go back to uh, Jennifer Walters and her cousin Bruce Banner, aka the Incredible Hulk, uh, driving on the driving on the road with Bruce still having his arm broken, even though in the comics the Incredible Hulk has a healing factor and can heal faster than Wolverine. Uh, I'm not sure if he can heal faster than Deadpool, but definitely faster than Wolverine. And this arm should have healed ages ago. And they're pretty much just talking about whether Captain America was a virgin or not. Just a riveting stuff for the comic. Nothing but fresh, new A+ material, I tell you. And then suddenly, um, in the middle of the road, a alien ship appears, and they crash off course with Bruce Banner being unconscious and Jennifer Walters being a normal person, being the one dragging her out. And all she's got is a gash, and Bruce's blood drips into her, and that causes her to change into the She-Hulk. As a comic book fan, I have a problem with this. You see, in the comics, the She-Hulk became the She-Hulk because Jennifer Walters was gunned down. I think it had something to do with her father and a criminal, and she was gunned down. And Bruce Banner, the Hulk, had to give her a blood transfusion to save her life. But there was a moral dilemma. If he managed to successfully transfer her blood, it would most likely mutate her, and she would become the same kind of monster as he is. Does he save her life, or does he does he save her life and subject her to becoming a monster, or does he let her die and keep her humanity? There's a bit of a moral dilemma and a bit of sacrifice in it, and which made Hope interesting and added a lot of layers to Bruce's character. But no, we can't do that because that would involve saving a woman's life by the act of a man, and we can't have that in modern entertainment. So it's got to be Jennifer Walters who saves his Bruce, even though Bruce doesn't need saving because he's the Hulk. He could easily survive a car crash. And She-Hulk, and when she turns into She-Hulk, she just runs off and then transforms back into Jennifer Walters, and her clothes are messed up. And then she gets met by a bunch of girls who, let's just say, they're involved in nocturnal activities, to say the least, and keep it family friendly. And they assume that she got abused by probably a lover, and they try to give her clothes who make her look like one of them. Classy. Yeah, and remember, this whole bathroom scene. This was the scene that Jessica Gal thought was so pivotal to the series and to the episode. The one that she fought tooth and nail to keep, despite what Disney and Marvel were saying that they should take that out. Yeah, that was totally worth keeping, Jessica Gal. So anyway, Jen leaves the bar, and a bunch of guys start catcalling on her, and it starts to upset Jen enough for her to turn to the She-Hulk, and she was about to attack her, but Bruce stops her by turning to the Hulk. So just bear in mind that Jen was going to turn to the She-Hulk and endanger the lives of men whose worst action was catcalling. Now, to be fair, now I'm not saying that what they're doing was right, but to be fair, she's dressed up like, well, let's not pull any punches. She looks like a prostitute. So I don't know what she was expecting. And just bear in mind that she was transforming, raged up, and was potentially willing to injure, if not even kill these men over it. Now I want you to bear this in mind because she's going to say something that's going to make this scene look a lot worse. So we cut to Hulk and Jen being on Hulk's little home in Mexico that was loaned to him by Tony Stark because I guess Bruce Banner doesn't have any money left over to have his own personal home and lab. And Bruce says that um, because of their special genetic makeup, that allows them to uh, harness gamma radiation and allows them to turn into the Hulks. Now, that's kind of true within the comics, but that kind of doesn't really make sense within the MCU because in the MCU is following more of uh, ultimate the ultimate explanation for the Hulk, where it was more that Bruce thought that gamma radiation was the key to unlocking the super soldier serum and creating the super soldier. So it was just a mix of that created the Hulk. But now it's just genetics. And Bruce doesn't consider that maybe he should look into his family tree to see if there's anyone else in his family that could potentially become Hulks. Because a whole family full of Hulks, I mean, just one Hulk alone could destroy the planet if they wanted to. Now, a whole family of Hulks is just a whole huge danger in its own right. And he also explains that because of the genetic makeup of her DNA, he was able to put her blood into his body and heal his arm. So yes, Hulk has his arm healed, and it's because of her. And if you think that doesn't make any sense, it's because it doesn't. Her blood was mutated because of his blood that was at the gamma radiation. That should have had the healing properties. Because, like I said, in the comics, the Hulk has a healing factor. He didn't need he didn't need anyone else's blood. But no, they did here. And if you're wondering why Bruce Banner didn't turn into the Hulk sooner, it was because he had apparently put some inhibitor, which doesn't make any sense because he's not the Savage Hulk right now. He's the Smart Hulk. I'm not going to call him Professor Hulk because he doesn't act like Professor Hulk from the comics. In fact, I've even given him the moniker of Cuck Hulk because of just how watered down and lame his character has gotten and how passive he tends to be. Sorry, my throat. But instead of thinking that, oh wow, you finally, instead of thinking, wow, you healed your arm with my blood, that's amazing. Jennifer Walters takes it that, oh, so I'm better than you? Isn't it nice to know that our protagonist is a huge narcissist? And it pretty much, we see what happens next. Hulk tries to teach Jen how to be a Hulk. Um, and they try to figure out the trigger of the transformation by putting in that buzzsaw room. And She-Hulk is she triggers the She-Hulk transformation, but Bruce learns that he doesn't that unlike him, he doesn't have multiple. She doesn't have multiple personality disorder. Now this wasn't explored in the MCU, but in the comics, the Hulk is pretty much a manifestation of Bruce's repressed emotions and self-loathing, and also the childhood abuse he suffered as a kid from his father, and also seeing his mother die. It really is a tragedy, and it's a real shame that we never got this explored in the MCU. If anything, this was more explored in the Ang Lee 2003 film of all things. But yeah, that's the reason uh, why people like the Abomination and Jennifer Walters don't have multiple personalities. But yeah, she can apparently control herself. Now, just bear in mind, she's in control of herself. And think back to that bar scene. but she hulked out and was ready to attack the men just for catcalling her. Which means she was choosing to do this. She was choosing to endanger people who didn't actually deserve it. Our hero, everybody. Um, but yeah, tries to continue to train She-Hulk. They try the boulder thing. First, he throws a boulder, it goes far. She-Hulk throws a boulder, and it goes a little bit further than he does. Then he, out of his bruised male ego, he tries to chuck the boulder even further to just show her how it's done, and it's just making her look jealous. Then they do the yoga thing. She-Hulk does it easily. Do jumping, she's able to do it equally. The thunderclap, blah blah blah. So yeah, basically they're chasing She-Hulk. Just do everything with little training and effort, and do it better. And do in some cases do it better than Hulk. Isn't it just great when your protagonist doesn't have to struggle and just completely perfect from the get go? Doesn't it make them incredibly interesting and relatable when they have no flaws or any conflicts that they have to overcome? And Bruce pretty much is just continuing to try to stress out that she needs to go through the training process because being a Hulk is dangerous. Just even the slightest bit of anger could trigger a transformation, causing her to do immense damage. And oh, if you've been on Twitter, you would have seen that clip from IMDb saying, basically being a yes queen slay moment for them, and it got ratioed to oblivion by the audience and rational people. But it's basically Jennifer Walters saying that, oh, you don't know what it's like to control your anger, but I do. I know how to control my anger because I had to deal with uh, being catcalled and incompetent men uh, trying to lecture me on my field of expertise, and I have to control my anger. Otherwise, I'll be described as emotional or get murdered. And I do it infinitely better than you. You control your anger, huh? You control your anger despite hulking out and trying to attack the guys at the bar. You hate it when people tell you, try to lecture you about your field of expertise. It's about you trying to uh, lecture the Hulk on his field of expertise. And you know the funny thing is, the Hulk could easily shut this down for all the things the Hulk has been through. Even if we're just going by the NCU's continuity, the Hulk has had to spend over 15 years of being a social outcast, being hunted by the military and by supervillains and even some superheroes. It's just because of the power that he has, and he had to keep himself in check because the slightest provocation could cause him to Hulk out and cause him to be basically a walking weapon of mass destruction and cause untold levels of death and destruction. But no, the She-Hulk has it worse because she gets catcalled and mansplained. You know, when I was watching this, it crossed me that we have a narcissistic, stubborn, uncompromising protagonist who seems perfect despite the flaws being should be abundantly clear to the audience, and she's being defended by the feminists and the SJWs, and the writers are completely oblivious and aren't willing to take constructive criticism by the fans. And on top of that, with the unfunny jokes, terrible CGI, and bad fight choreography. Oh, trust me, we're going to get to that. It became abundantly clear to me that She-Hulk is basically the MCU's version of Batwoman from CW. Yes, you remember that awful show that lasted 3 seasons, which was 3 more than it actually deserved, or if it had some of the worst writing in superhero history. It had the most insufferable character in Kate Kane. I know I heard she's better in the comics, but she just in the CW show she was terrible. And then they created Ryan Wilder, who wasn't much better. So yeah, we basically have a spiritual successor to Batwoman and She-Hulk. Uh, so She-Hulk tries to leave. She doesn't feel like she has anything to learn. Hulk's trying to get her to listen. Says that she has to go to the toilet, and she tries to drive off in the Jeep, and Bruce stops it for a moment. And despite being the Incredible Hulk, despite being able to lift over 100 pounds with ease, despite what they said to guys, that's not his base limit. I mean, he's able to do that with a lot more than that at its base. But besides that, despite being that strong, being incredibly durable, no pun intended, he gets ran over by he gets ran over by a jeep. I'm I am absolutely certain that a jeep does not weigh over 100 tons, and this would be easy for Hulk to stop. In fact, we've even seen Hulk lift military jeeps before in the Incredible Hulk 2008. You see, the difference was that those jeeps were driven by men, but because this jeep was driven by a woman, it's infinitely more powerful, and thus she's able to get over on the Hulk. And this pretty much just leads them having a fight, and they just keep destroying things around the around Hulk's place. But fortunately, the fight ends in a draw, which, considering all the factors and the writers, that's probably the best thing we can hope for. So thank God for small favors. And it pretty much just says that Hulk apologizes. He says that he accepts that Jen can just be a lawyer if she wants to be. She doesn't have to go through the superhero thing. And he's happy for her. But Jen just breaks the fourth wall and says he doesn't really mean that. Thanks, She-Hulk. You couldn't even let your cousin have that moment of humility and character growth. And she apologizes for everything, although she kind of backpedals by saying that even though everything I said was true, it's nice to know that our character has no sense of humility and is not willing to admit that she's wrong. And she also doubles down on this by saying that when the flashback breaks off, they said, so basically my cousin and I had a fight, and I apologize. Not really, because I was right and he was wrong. Don't you just love it when your character thinks that they're right and the writers just go out of their way to make them seem right? Because why have your character be flawed and having to learn a lesson and have them be humble, so which makes them relatable and likable? When we could just have them be a bunch of arrogant, narcissistic. No, there's a certain 4-letter word that I would like to use, but I promise God that I would stop using such vulgar language. But you guys pretty much can guess what I want to use. So we go back to the court trial, and it's interrupted by Titania, played by Jamil, I think is what her name was. And yeah, and she basically looks like Peggy Bundy if she was in a wrestler outfit. Al, I want to watch Oprah. Al, where's my bonbons? Al, rub my tushy. So why? So you're all probably wondering why is Titania the She-Hulk's arch nemesis, and who should likely be the final antagonist of this series? busting into this courtroom and attacking people? That's a good question, and I'd like to know the answer. And I'm the one who watched this. Uh, but no, she attacks, and Jen's best friend says that she needs to come to She-Hulk and fight. And they have this little moment where she takes off the clothes and says, "Oh, I love these shoes," and she's really upset having to take them off. And then She-Hulk turns into the She-Hulk, and we saw that scene where Titania tries to jump kick the She-Hulk. The fight choreography does not look any better. It has some of the obvious wire works. So yeah, much like Batwoman, we can't expect any good fight choreography. And in literally 9 seconds, She-Hulk punches her out and takes her down. 9 seconds. Titania, the She-Hulk's arch nemesis. A woman who's supposed to be just as strong as She-Hulk. Jessica Gal, you do realize that the main antagonist is supposed to be a threat to the protagonist, right? If you make them be taken down like a chump, then why should we care if the She-Hulk fights this character? Why should we care about this character in general? And oh man, the writing in this show is just awful. But mercifully, that's where the episode ends off. This show is just awful. It really is on the same level as Batwoman, and I don't want to talk about it anymore. So next, I'm going to be talking about my review of Dragon Ball Super Superhero. I'll catch you boys later.